The lightsaber was never meant to be the Emperor's weapon. To him, it was the crutch of a lesser age, a relic wielded by those too weak to command the Force itself. Sidious despised it. He saw in the Jedi's polished blades a kind of dependency, a need to hold power rather than to be power. To draw a saber was to confess that you could not destroy your enemy through the will of the Force alone, and in Sidious's eyes, that was weakness. The very weakness that had doomed the Jedi long before his rise. Yet, even as he rejected the blade, he still mastered it. He practiced in secret, studying the forms, dissecting every motion the Jedi had ever recorded, not because he respected them, but because he wanted to understand them. To him, lightsaber combat was not an art, not a discipline, not honor. It was an autopsy. Every stance, every parry, every graceful spin was just anatomy, the exposed bones of a dying religion. He trained not for perfection, but for desecration. When Sidious ignited the blade, it was never out of need, it was an insult. The sound of it coming to life was mockery, a reminder to the Jedi that even their most sacred tradition could be turned against them. Sidious fought not as a duelist, but as a predator who had learned his prey's every movement, every reflex, every mistake. He had no interest in proving himself through the sword. His victories were foregone conclusions, orchestrated through fear, deception, and the Force itself long before the blades ever crossed. The duel was merely the final act, a theatrical flourish of a man who wanted the galaxy to see the Jedi fall by their own means. What makes Sidious so fascinating is that for all his disgust towards the lightsaber, he never underestimated it. He studied every form as if preparing to dismantle them one by one. To the Jedi, their lightsaber styles were sacred texts. To Sidious, they were equations waiting to be rewritten by a superior hand. And he did rewrite them. His training was obsessive. It came not from love of battle, but from the belief that mastery of all things, even those beneath him, made him untouchable. The dark side itself seemed eager to teach him, as though the hatred that lived in him made every secret of the Force eager to be known. Sidious learned quickly. His body moved as if the dark side guided each and every motion. His instincts sharpened into a predatory grace. By the time he took the name Sidious, he no longer saw the lightsaber as a weapon. It had become a tool of humiliation, a symbol of conquest. In his hands, it represented the death of everything the Jedi believed in. When the Jedi saw that flash of red ignite, they thought that they were facing a Sith Lord, but they were wrong. They were facing something that had surpassed both Jedi and Sith tradition, something that had studied the game only to end it. Sidious never needed the lightsaber to kill. He carried one because it pleased the dark side to watch him desecrate the last symbol of the Jedi Order. He created a lineage of disdain. The story of Sidious's relationship with the lightsaber doesn't begin with just him. It begins long before his rise in the shadow of a lineage that shaped how the Sith would view the lightsaber forever. Welcome lore junkies to the archives, and today we will be analyzing and explaining the full lightsaber form of Darth Sidious, as well as why he selected said form. But to understand Sidious, we must first understand the beings that taught him. His master Plagueis the Wise believed that the lightsaber was a tool of a primitive era. Plagueis was a scientist, a philosopher, a manipulator and creator of life and death itself. To him, the weapon was ornamental, a distraction of what true power held. Plagueis studied the Force at a molecular level, not through the elegance of motion, but through precision and intellect. The saber was something he carried because the galaxy expected it of Sith, but never because he required it. At first, Darth Plagueis did not hate the lightsaber. He would learn that contempt from someone else. His master Tenebrous had seen the blade differently. Tenebrous was the 5th Sith Lord, and he treated combat as a science, a study of geometry, momentum, and probability. Tenebrous believed that every strike could be calculated, that every duel could be solved like an equation. He found beauty in motion, a kind of mathematical elegance in the chaos of a fight. Plagueis hated that. He saw it as wasted potential, and their relationship reflected that. The student forced into endless sparring sessions that he saw no purpose in. But even in his resentment, Plagueis learned. He learned discipline. He learned how to read the patterns of battle, how to dismantle them through intellect instead of instinct. And when the time came, he turned that cold understanding on his own master, murdering Tenebrous not through combat, but through betrayal. This is where Sidious's philosophy was born, in the ashes of this contradiction. Sidious inherited Tenebrous's fascination with structure and Plagueis' contempt for tradition, blending them into something new. He became the culmination of both extremes, a scholar who saw the weapon as nothing but an instrument of domination, and a duelist who understood that even contempt could be perfected into an art. For Sidious, the lightsaber was never about elegance or the purity of form, it was about control. He didn't want to know how to fight, he wanted to know how others fought, how they thought, how they moved, what mistakes they made without realizing it. Sidious learned from every Jedi form as if dissecting an organism, peeling away the layers until only raw instinct remained. That was how he viewed the Jedi, predictable creatures of pattern and restraint. Every style they created was meant to control the dark side's chaos. Every defensive form was a cage. Sidious studied these cages the way a serpent studied its prey, waiting for the moment to strike, knowing that once he understood the limits of their motion, he could shatter it effortlessly. His lineage had taught him that mastery does not require belief, it only requires understanding. Tenebrous had sought beauty in the lightsaber, Plagueis had dismissed it entirely, but Sidious took both truths and corrupted them. He learned the beauty of combat so that he could destroy those who believed in it. As a young Sith apprentice, he would practice alone, rehearsing Jedi forms with clinical detachment, each motion precise, but devoid of reverence. He didn't look at it as art, he looked at it as a corpse, not to appreciate it, but to understand its anatomy well enough to desecrate it later. When Plagueis looked upon his apprentice, he saw it, not grace, but potential, and he deemed him a master of the lightsaber, a man so innately in tune with the dark side that even hate itself obeyed him. Where other Sith had to summon rage, Palpatine carried it like breath. His superiority was not learned, his superiority was instinct. Supremacy flowed through him naturally, and the lightsaber, that symbol of discipline and restraint, became the perfect instrument through which to demonstrate it. He didn't need to master it to prove his power. He mastered it to prove that nothing was beyond him, not even the things that he despised. This is the essence of Sidious's lineage, a bloodline that began with fascination, evolved into arrogance, and ended in domination. By the time Palpatine became Emperor, he was no longer a part of that line. He had absorbed it. He had become its conclusion. For years, scholars and duelists alike attempted to understand his fighting style, and they all failed. To the Jedi who witnessed it, his movements were a blur, a storm too fast to study. To the Sith who once served him, it was heresy, a complete rejection of every principle that they had followed. This is how Vader and Dooku viewed it. But the truth is stranger. Sidious's movements looked chaotic because they weren't bound by a single lightsaber form philosophy. Beneath the frenzy, there was order. A hidden structure guided every strike, every feint, every parry. It was not random, it was designed. His style wasn't built around a single form or even a combination. It was built on something deeper, a framework, a barrier of knowledge that gave him access to every form without allegiance to any. He became the dark side's answer to the Jedi's obsession with structure, limitless adaptability born of contempt. The foundation of his form was in essence the synthesis of Nine-Man Form VI, but in Sidious's hands, it was unrecognizable. The Jedi practiced Nine-Man as balance, a way to combine all the others in moderation, to seek equilibrium. To the Jedi, Form VI was a form for peacekeepers, diplomats, and those who valued restraint. But Sidious turned that restraint into a weapon. For him, Nine-Man was not balance, it was a scaffolding. It was the silent skeleton upon which his chaos would be built. A platform that let him borrow what he needed from every other form in existence. From Ataru's ferocity to Makashi's precision, from Djem So's counterstrikes to Cerisu's control, Sidious could draw on any discipline in an instant, abandoning it just as quickly when it no longer served him. Darth Sidious moved through the Jedi forms the way that a surgeon dissects muscle, starting with the serenity of Form I Shii Cho. Here he learned how the Jedi built their foundations on order and rhythm. Then he twisted the precision of Makashi into a mockery of elegance, turning its fencing lines into razor-sharp executions. He borrowed Cerisu's calm defenses only to weaponize them, deflecting attacks not to endure but to bait openings. From Ataru, he stole the explosive bursts of movement, using them not for grace, but for terror, a predator's pounce instead of a gymnast's arc. Djem So gave him the counterstrike, the ability to turn every defense into a killing blow, while Nine-Man became his laboratory, the synthesis that led him to weave everything together. Yet, all these were merely steps in his ascent. Beneath them waited the form that could never coexist with restraint or serenity. The lightsaber form that embodied the dark side's hunger itself. Juyo, Form VII, the culmination of every philosophy that he had studied, and the one destined to consume them all. But here's what's fascinating. Sidious did not think of these forms as separate. He saw them as tools, interchangeable, and beneath him. They were remnants of an outdated language that he alone had learned to speak fluently. The Jedi spent centuries debating the merits of one form over the other. Sidious absorbed them all, hollowed them out, and replaced their meaning with the will of his own. That was the true nature of his combat. Every strike was a lesson in corruption. Every motion said this: your forms mean nothing. Your laws mean nothing. Your defenses are illusions. He was the embodiment of the dark side's hunger, devouring knowledge, consuming art, and leaving only his own domination behind. And in that consumption, something began to change. His movements, once elegant and calculated, grew frenzied and primal. The scaffolding remained, but what it supported was no longer structure. It was frenzied emotion. One word. It had become wrath. He had learned the language of the lightsaber forms, but now the dark side was teaching him its own language. That was when Sidious discovered the form that would define him. The forbidden style that the Jedi swore never to teach. The one that even the Sith feared to wield without losing themselves to the madness. But Sidious did not lose himself. He became it. The truth of Sidious's technique can only remain hidden for so long. Beneath the scaffolding he'd built, beneath the synthesis that gave him every form at once, there was something raw, something forbidden, something that was never meant to be mastered. The truth was Juyo, Form VII, the seventh and the final language of the blade, a form so volatile that the Jedi Council had locked it away. Unlike the others, it was fueled exclusively through dark emotion. It thrived on passion, aggression, and emotional abandon. It promised power through chaos, but it devoured those who dared to wield that chaos. For most Jedi, it was a path to self-destruction, but for Sidious, it was home. The dark side had been waiting for a vessel like Sidious, a being who would never resist its pull, who didn't need to summon rage because rage was his natural state. Juyo was the language of rage, the grammar of hatred made flesh. He didn't channel the dark side to control it. He let it move through him, and in that surrender, he found perfect mastery. When Sidious cut down Jedi in his office, this was Juyo in its purest form. Violence without pause, momentum without thought. His strikes were not measured or elegant, they were inevitable. Each movement collapsed the distance between him and his victims in a single blinding flash. One heartbeat, and 3 Jedi were dead. This was not speed alone, it was prophecy. Sidious didn't anticipate their defenses. He simply knew there was nothing that they could do, that they no longer mattered. When he faced Yoda in the Senate chamber, that same energy erupted again. But this time the mask of chaos lifted for a moment, revealing the architecture beneath it. Sidious leapt across the pods in wild spinning arcs, laughter echoing the chamber. To the untrained eye it looked like madness, a politician gone rabid. But every leap, every turn, every unpredictable reversal was calculated through the rhythm of Form VII. Yoda's Ataru sought balance between speed and control. Sidious twisted that balance into carnage. Where Yoda flipped to evade, Sidious spun to destroy. Where Yoda found focus in motion, Sidious found ecstasy. He wasn't fighting for victory, he was celebrating it, reveling in the knowledge that even the greatest Jedi Master could do nothing to contain the storm. And on Mandalore came the duel that revealed the full breadth of Sidious's mastery. When Sidious ignited 2 crimson blades against Maul and Savage, the galaxy witnessed something no Jedi had ever seen. Juyo made infinite. He fought as though 2 Sith lived within a single vessel. Every motion defied pattern. His left-hand saber struck with precision, his right with fury. When one blade parried, the other struck. When one pressed forward, the other spun behind. Maul's acrobatics and Savage's brute strength were useless before him, not because they were weak, but because they were predictable. Sidious's movements had no pattern to exploit. He was improvisation given physical form, a symphony of hatred orchestrated in real time. His laughter rose as his blades tore through them, as if the act itself, the very existence of combat, delighted him. This is what Form VII meant to Darth Sidious. It was not rage for the sake of rage, or destruction for the sake of victory. It was transcendence through domination. The saber became an extension of the dark side's will, and his body, its perfect instrument. Where Windu's Vapad sought to flirt with the darkness and redirect it safely through discipline, Sidious's Juyo drowned in it and emerged smiling. He didn't risk losing himself to the storm because Sidious was the storm. Every duel he fought has the same conversation, repeated in different dialects. Against Jedi Masters, it's inevitability. Against Yoda, it became mockery. Against Maul and Savage, it was punishment. Each battle ended in the same way, not with Sidious triumphant, but with his enemy exposed. They realized too late that Sidious wasn't fighting them as a man. He was fighting them as a true conduit of the dark side itself. For the Jedi, Juyo was forbidden. For Darth Sidious, Juyo was home. When the galaxy thinks of Sidious, it remembers the lightning, the crackle of his rage, and the screams that followed. It remembers his laughter, the throne, the war. But buried beneath that legacy is the duelist that he never wanted to be. The reluctant master who studied the art of the blade purely to desecrate it. He became the perfect swordsman only because he believed the sword itself was meaningless. This contradiction made him unstoppable and dangerous. The Jedi's forms were built on philosophy, restraint, balance, and peace. But Sidious weaponized philosophy itself. He used forms as disguises, fragments of a language he spoke more fluently than their creators. The irony of it all was that his disdain for the lightsaber freed him from every limitation that the Jedi placed on it. He didn't need to believe in the art in order to perfect it. And by the end, he no longer needed to draw his lightsaber at all. He kept it hidden away, polished, untouched. He could kill with a thought. He could destroy fleets with a gesture. The lightsaber had truly become obsolete, a toy for lesser beings. And yet there is something haunting about this image. The Emperor's hilt, dormant, resting beside a man who once turned it into the perfect weapon, because it represents a contradiction that defines Sidious. Sidious was not a god as he desired to be. He was something more terrible. He was a vessel, a man so perfectly attuned to the dark side that even his contempt became power. The lightsaber was just another channel for that power, a way for the Force to reveal what happens when knowledge and hatred are made one. Sidious fought not because he needed to. He fought because it amused him to see the Jedi fall by their own creation. And so, my friends, what are your thoughts on Darth Sidious and his preferred lightsaber form? What are your thoughts on our analysis and Sidious's approach to lightsaber combat in general? As always, guys, thank you so much for stopping by the archives here today. Hope you're having a great one, and may the Force be with you.